Hello, welcome to the Champ We Are United podcast, the number one football comic podcast. This is the podcast which remembers and pays homage to the famous stories and characters from the likes of Roy of the Rovers, Tiger, Scorcher, Score and Roar, Football Picture Story Monthly, and of course, Champ with the We Are United strip. Welcome to episode 73.
Woohoo!
Welcome to episode 83. I am your host, Matt Button Richards, and I'm joined in the studio tonight at Champ Towers. Let's see who's come off the bench for the pod squad tonight. First of all, we have Mr. Paul Tangent Richardson. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Matt. It's good to be here tonight again, looking for another one. 83 episodes. Who'd have thought it, eh?
Who'd have thought it? I know, good stuff. And also, this is fantastic. He's back. The voice of reason's back. Simmo. Hi, Simmo.
Hi guys, nice to be back. Hopefully we're in for a good one tonight.
I think so.
Called in for emergency duty.
Yeah, just hope you don't pull a muscle.
Just make the numbers up.
Yeah.
Stretch them hammies.
Yeah. Excellent to have you back, mate. And shouts out, Goal obviously, one of our founding fathers. We'll be back very soon. Just his life's a bit busy at the moment, so shout out to Goal. Neil Bygone Berrigan is on his holidays. He's gone to Devon, so he should be back. He should be back in a week or so. And actually, good news that his son Ollie, he had a bit of appendicitis, and I understand he's on the road to recovery. So glad that Ollie's a lot better. That's good news.
Yeah.
And also, of course, a shout out to Ridders, who's taken a break from the pod. Rumours that he fell out with Larry Blackman and Doc Cotton over a cup of tea are untrue. So scotch those rumours. Hope you're well, Ridders, out there.
He's trying to break the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest honeymoon, though, isn't he?
Yeah. I think we don't go any further into that, do we?
No, we'll leave that.
We'll open that door. Okay, right. We've got a packed show today. In a minute, I'm going to take us through Melvin's musings and view from the House of Lord with the social media feedback.
Yeah.
Then we have, you're next up, Paul. What are you doing for us today?
Well, I am going to do a start of a review of the latest and the much awaited Striker Volume 26, the final installment of all the historical Striker years. And of course, I think we had the exclusive when Pete Nash came onto the show. It does include a brand new 100-page story. I'm not going to quite touch on that in this pod, but a warning to all you Striker fans, there will be some spoilers, but we will try and do some spoiler alerts for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely will. And then after that, I am going to be talking about a story from Roy of the Rovers, the footballer who wouldn't stay dead.
Yes.
This is one which I think hopefully a lot of our listeners will remember out there. So I'll be kind of going through that, how it started, how it ended, etc. And then we'll move. We'll probably touch during the pod actually on some of the future episodes we've got lined up.
Yeah.
Then we'll do the socials and we'll do the goodbyes, and that's it.
Interspersed with loads of voice of reason, hey Simmo?
Well, we'll see about that. I'm out of practice. I might not make it through the first 5 minutes.
I mean, he's fit, but is he match fit? This is the question. This is the question. Yeah. So
with this belly, I've not been match fit for 10 years or more. Unless it's match fit for sumo, I might have a chance there.
Right.
Like, having trouble getting nappies to fit at this age.
Let's part that one with the honeymoon, eh, Matt? Let's move on.
Yeah, I think so. Right. Okay. Right. So we're going to move on to social media feedback, and let's do both of the intros at once. So here we go.
Wow! It's Melvin's musings.
See, he's not here, but he's always here. that's the intro for Melvin's Musings, and the other one.
Everybody in the house of Lord. Everybody in the house of Lord. One Lord, one Adrian. Everybody in the house of Lord.
Is that you chuckling in the background, and not me for once?
I think it's. I don't know. I think it's probably you. I don't know.
Never gets old, that does it?
No. It never gets old. But let's hope we don't have to do many more theme tunes. Otherwise, we'll be here for like 5 hours. Won't we? Just listeners' theme tunes. Right.
We could do a whole podcast on it, couldn't we? Yeah.
Right. Here we go. So let's kick off. So the last episode was episode 82, when it was we did the comic life of Vernon Elliott. First of all, on the Roy of the Rovers 40 years after, we had Steve Ely said Jeff Giles is going to put his back out with form like that. I don't know, when I posted it, there's a picture of Jeff Giles, and he's doing the most pathetic kind of barbell lift, isn't he? Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Yeah.
So it's well spotted, Steve. Paul Music Man. Hi, Paul. He said, I wonder if this character helped to normalise just a bit the idea of non-white footballers in England in the minds of young footy fans. He was already a character when I started reading Roy of the Rovers in 78 or 79. Black players were only just starting to break through at the highest level at that time, e.g. Regis, Cunningham and Batson at West Brom. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. I'm sure I mean, they were coming through anyway, but it does kind of normalise it like we touched on in the show, Paul. But good spot. House of Lord, Mr. Lord, Adrian Lord. He says, I love the friend of the show. I love the player profiles. It was great to learn more about Vernon. It was also nice to hear Andy Locke getting mentioned. We've talked about this before. He says, this story and how it's forgotten about was really poor. He looked like such a good character too. I was pleased to see he reappeared. It would be nice to see the backstory, though, from him running away from the ground to his reappearance in Melchester's shirt. Yeah, I mean, that's a good shout. We'll never know, obviously. I'm sure people have pontificated over it before, many a time. Good stuff, Adrian. Thank you. And then we have, of course, the Melster. And the headline is Tangent Paul rejects controversial breakaway rumours as Mute Button Matt produces virtuoso performance.
Can't argue with that. Can't argue.
Well done, Trevor. He goes, whilst it certainly wasn't clear and obvious as episode 82 got underway, Tangent Paul did appear to stray into an offside position and making a legal approach to legendary artist David Skew, who was spending the weekend at his luxury bijou broom cupboard in Chinatown. However, with Simmo's Voice of Reason system unavailable again, he's back again. Back again tonight. Yeah. A check couldn't take place to see whether the tapping up allegations had any substance. Inevitably, perhaps, the alleged enticement claims sparked accusations that Tangent Paul was planning to start a rival football comic podcast with the former Tiger and Roy of the Rovers illustrator. Well, you thought better of that, didn't you, Paul? You thought about it.
I don't know where these vicious rumours are coming from, but I can put them to bed. Right? There's only one football comic podcast, and this is it.
Oh, no, we're the number one, you mean? Not the
There's only one number one.
Don't tell everybody we're the only one.
I got my numbers muddled up. We are the number one football comic podcast. We're number one,
exactly. Thank you.
Don't worry, Matt, it's just marketing.
It's just marketing.
It's like when they say something's up to 100% effective. Well, yeah, that's anything then.
We are the deluxe football comic podcast, aren't we?
Unique. They can't argue that, can they?
No, exactly.
New and improved.
So Trevor carries on. The controversy was quickly forgotten, though, as Tangent Paul cleverly slipped the ball to Mute Button Matt, who then embarked on a remarkable solo run that began with the tantalising news of his negotiations with none other than Barry Tomlinson. It seems Mute Button Matt has clinched a deal that will see the godfather of UK football comics join the team in September to commemorate the 70th anniversary of Tiger Comic. Yes, like we said, that they are going to be the next episodes we record. We're going to be recording those in the next couple of weeks to go out early September. So there will be a lack of episodes between this one and early September, but that's because we're working on the very special episodes with Barry and also David. We're enticing David out of the cupboard again. After a quick wall pass with Tangent Paul, Mute Button Matt showed a clean pair of heels again, slaloming his way through another classic, This Is Your Comic Life, which starred former Melchester Rovers left winger and antiques expert Vernon Elliott.
Forgot about the Antiques Roadshow part. That was brilliant, that was, yeah.
This section was a real Bobby Dazzler as TV's David Dickinson might say Q impersonation. Unfortunately, I don't know. What's your David Dickinson like, Simmo? Yeah, same as mine.
It's not good. No, not good at all. Yeah. This is when you need goal.
Yeah, exactly.
He'll try anything, won't he? He'll have a go.
I never thought I'd say those words, but we need goal.
In fact, his impression of the Invisible Man this week is spot on.
In all fairness, it's one of his best ever impressions.
I think I've just got him. I think I've still got him on mute. I think from the last 4 or 5 weeks.
All right.
Anyway,
take him off mute.
No, it's leaving one. Brilliant stuff, Trevor. Super. Thank you very much indeed. We move on to the Champ We Are United Facebook site, and Terry Angus, also like friend of the show, no big fan of Striker. He said he mentioned about the Canon strips. Paul, I think you mentioned about the Canon strips, didn't you? Talking about stories, and he said he's got a lot of those, and he'll have to find a way of getting them to us. So yeah, Terry, any way you want to kind of message, perhaps you want to message Paul.
Please reach out to me on Facebook. Yeah, Terry, I'd love to chat about those, and that really would be. I think that would make a fantastic pod. Those the Canon story. Yeah.
They almost feel elusive, don't they?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, Terry. And then I did post the episode on the mighty world of British comics, which is another Facebook site which I joined recently. And I'll continue to do that until they kick me off the site. So there's a couple of comments on that site. Harvey Novak said Trudgeon for England.
Yeah,
Jumbo
Trudgeon.
I'll have to do him at some point. And then Neil Jackson said runs an antique shop with Terry West. And yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know. It's quite strange, introduction to a comic strip, running an antique shop. I mean, that's the 70s for you. It was a crazy time, apparently. And finally, we finish on X, and we have our friend from Down Under, Aussie Lee.
Hey, friend of the show.
G'day.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
And he goes, it was great to hear the podcast go all antique roadshow with a double act deep dive into the career of Vernon Elliott, a true Melchester legend who deserved a better end to his career. Yeah, he did, really. Like to think he's still out there running his shop, maybe dabbling in a bit of sports memorabilia.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, of course, there's actually probably a much bigger market in that type of thing these days than would have been back then, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. It probably wasn't.
He might be collecting comics.
You never know. Yes, exactly.
Oh, what saddos would do that? Come on. I mean, what's cooler, antiques or comics?
Comics.
Antique comics. Anyway, there you go. That's the end of the feedback. Thank you very much to Trevor. Thank you very much, Adrian, and thank you to everybody who's commented on the various channels. And yeah, as we always say, please get in touch with us. Give us any feedback, positive or negative. Prefer the positive, but give us a negative as well. And if there's any characters or storylines you want us to cover, then please let us know. That's that. I'll pass the baton over now to Mr. Paul Tangent Richardson, who's going to talk us through Striker.
Yes. Okay, right. So I must admit, I've got a little bit of trepidation about this. So let me, for those of our regular listeners, as I kind of sat down on the latest volume, I did actually remember our interview with Pete Nash, and I did listen back today, and I kind of missed the part. But if you remember,
I'll show you, just for listeners' sake, the previous episodes of Pete Nash.
Yes, please do.
5, when he just talks about his whole career. 45, when Rab comes back, another one of our founding fathers, and interviews him. And then recently he was on episode 74 talking about this latest edition. But sorry, Paul, hand it back.
Yeah, and he did brilliantly too. I mean, he actually gave us a little snippet of what was to come, but he was talking about it, and I kind of made mention that he wouldn't let us down and he was nervous, and I sort of had to roll back, and I did that. Obviously, we are amateurs, and I showed my amateurishness there in the interview. So when I picked up this edition to have a look at it, I must admit that was kind of on my mind. But you know, as Pete did on that night, he revealed and he gave us, you know, the insight on how we feel such responsibility, not just to his characters in the story, but to us, the fans. So as I opened the cover on that this last volume. I wondered if it could live up to the expectation, which has not only been building for weeks since I placed my order, but has built from the delivery of the first volume. And I'm sure I speak for all Striker fans there. So with every volume again, Pete does his normal foreword, and in there he mentions how sad the fans are that it is ending, but he wondered if it really is sad, and he says he doesn't think so. And as we get to the end of his foreword and his reasons why it is not sad, I wondered in his last paragraph, well, in his last paragraph he says, and I wondered actually if our pod had any influence on him. So I'm going to quote him here. He says, "Hang on, these musings still seem a tad sad. The fat lady is having a gargle to clear her throat. But I said her song would end on a happy note, and so it will, in an epilogue at the end of this book, right after these brilliant messages from the fans. In the meanwhile, let's pick up from where we left volume 25 and then wrap things up with the new story for 2024. And I've got to say again, classic Pete Nash, drawing us in, getting us salivating as to why this is in fact a happy moment, only to leave us in anticipation of his conclusion. And we're only on page 8 of the volume. But as he said then, as I turn the page onto page 9, we pick up the story that was in the last comics, and we see our hero Nick Jarvis is quizzing Astuto on his latest expenses, including a £6,000 bill for lap dances. Over the next pages, we see 2 assassinations. And can you believe it? The highly skilled assassin actually letting a witness go who has seen her face, all because he's cute. Classic Pete Nash, of course.
I was going to say, this, you can tell we're not reading Roy of the Rovers at the moment, are we?
No. This is Striker, and this is Striker dispersed with hard-hitting news stories, but interspersed with comedy all the time. Then as we turn the pages, we're onto a different story, the Wannabe Warrior story, where we see Dr. Vetrov get arrested as he's been using the injured Warbury Warriors youth team players as guinea pigs for trialing his own brand of sports-enhancing drugs to see if his masking agents would beat the testers. Next, we're treated to a match report. Warbury Warriors away to Brecknock Dragons, World League Week 23. An Angelo penalty, Callum Angelo penalty in the 87th minute, sealing a 1-0 victory. And after 24 games, Warbury are top of the table by a point. Then we move on, and again, we're still with the comic content. We're treated to our first What Happened To. And first up, it's Mona Mullock. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. We are informed that Mona is now a social behaviour counsellor for a charity devoted to improving young men's attitudes towards women. We then get to see, or should I say read, Mona in action as she addresses the youth team players of Warbury Warriors. But I'm going to leave that for those of you that have read that in the comic, and obviously to read in volume 26. Then we're on to another story, the 2 pages of The Immoral Proposal, part 11. We see the corrupt immigration officer Ray informs Song Woo that he will be keeping some stuff at her house, and not to worry, he will just be staying overnight once in a while. After all, we need to keep up the appearances of being husband and wife. These stories move on, and there's a lot obviously going on there. The next pages, we're transported back to 1994 and episode 23 of how Eric and Vanessa met, or in this case, the way they were. And then on page 31, we're back to another Whatever Happened To, and this time it's Donna Angelo, who's Callum Angelo's dominatrix mum. We find out that Donna now owns the Oyster Club. Donna also helps out football agents get certain deals over the line using her unique skill set. Can she once more use these skills to get another deal done and in turn bank a £1 million fee for herself? Again, I shall leave you all to read those and hopefully find out if Donna is successful. We're then transported. I'll leave the magic to Pete Nash there, Simmo. Then we're transported back to the main story with Astuto. He's now about to bribe a FIFA official, trying to help get all the sanctions against the World League lifted. A picture of the official in a nappy and a big dummy always helps in these matters. The story moves fast, with news reports in Acapulco and Kampala of the 2 assassinations of club owners of clubs in the World League. We leave the story again with Nick Jarvis being called by Theodore Lang, the chief policy advisor to Gianni Infantino.
Oh wow.
And then we move swiftly on to the next Warbury match report. They were at home to the Lima Incas, and it's a 1-0 defeat, and that sees Warbury slip into second place on goal difference after 25 games. The next 2 pages. So here we go. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So for anybody that hasn't got volume 26 and you really don't want to hear about the new content, maybe just close your ears for the next few minutes. So the next 2 pages are in fact completely new content as we see Jack Duffy score the winner in the final game of the season. And I can't say this. I knew this was going to catch me out. Against the Spyrites Athens, a 1-0 victory, but we informed that Warbury, finished the season in a disappointing 4th place with question marks of the playing squad and manager Kurt Panzer. Number 2, Fabien Deguisson, obviously very famous for not being shy and coming forward and of his own ability, sees an opportunity, and in a round of golf with Eric Openshaw, he suggests that the club needs a dynamic new manager to inject some young blood into the first team squad. So very difficult, because now we're back to comic content, and we move back to the Wannabe Warriors story.
This is like the Matrix, isn't it?
Did you know something? Again, going through this, you do realise the genius that is Pete Nash, and the way he interweaves all these stories, and action-packed page from page. So we're back with the Wannabe Warriors.
Some of these names are legendary.
Yeah, he is brilliant. And of course, we know that the story with the youth team, and now we see the youth team manager Scrapper is struggling to understand what has happened as it's all being explained to him by the police and other doctors. And I'm just going to say on this one, in the last panel, Scrapper's just saying, trying to follow what you 2 are saying has given me a headache. And that's the end of that story. And I think that kind of tells us all about Scrapper as well. Then we're on to back to the Immoral Proposal Part 12. And now here again, we get the 2 pages that appeared in the comic, but we do also get some new content here. So again, we see the corrupt officer Ray seems to be in full control of Song Woo, and the story finishes with Song Woo's friend, work colleague Malacca looking on suspiciously and frustrated. And then, as I say, spoiler alert, there is 1 page now in the volume which is all text content. This story had been actually graphic novels, art, but not the 3D stuff for the main story Striker. Yeah. And again, on this, because it's text-based, a bit of a spoiler alert, but I'm not going to go into all the details, but I'm just going to leave it to the last line. And once again, it's Scrapper again. And it's Scrapper was in tears, and all he says, "I love a happy ending." I will leave it to you to read, for those of you that have listened, to see how we got to that.
Hi, Dorothy Cotton. Hello.
Perfect timing there. So I leave it to you to figure out how we got to that end then. Then we're back to 1994 and the conclusion of the Eric and Vanessa The Way They Were story. And on this one again, I'm just going to do the final line. And I've been struggling with this. I thought I was going to try and do an Eric Openshaw impression, but I'm just going to go with my own voice for this. I'm not really well. And so the final line from Eric Openshaw in that story is Nick Jarvis. Sorry, I should have said here, another spoiler alert, adult content to come. Sorry. Nick Jarvis, who to fucking hell's he? And that's the end of that one. And then we have another Whatever Happened To. And this one, the spotlight falls on Jim Cassidy, who's the old Thamesford manager who signed Nick Jarvis and gave him his chance in top flight football. Unfortunately, we informed that Jim, remember, this is actually in the comics, so those of you, so no spoiler alerts there here. Unfortunately, we are informed that Jim is suffering from Alzheimer's. And once more, we're treated to classic Pete Nash with comedy and poignancy all being dealt with in these couple of pages. And if you haven't read that, what happened to Jim Cassidy, I've got to say, and this is why you can understand why Strike has such a huge following of fans, because Pete Nash really does deal with serious topics, but he somehow manages to get that laughter in there as well. And I've got to say, Pete, rereading that, you know, you made me smile, laugh, and I also had a tear in my eye as well, hearing what's you know.
Well, it could have been worse. He could have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
I think we might have to check on Simmo a bit later, Matt. So we're on page 57 now, and we're back with the main Striker story and the last content from the comics. We see Astuto is offering Nick and Lee Ming, I really cocked that one up. Nick and Lee Ming, his yacht for a second chance honeymoon. For all of you readers out there, you remember many years ago when Nick and Lee got married, their yacht was blown up.
Oh wow, that's gonna put a damper on the holiday.
Yeah, exactly. So so a second chance honeymoon. Then we see Eric Openshaw running from, obviously I'm glossing a little bit and picking out the highlights here. Eric Openshaw running from Nick Jarvis's office after suggesting it was time to replace Kurt as manager, not realizing though that Kurt had walked into the office behind him. Typical Eric, whenever there was a tough subject, he's gone. Astuto now is making a deal with a hired assassin sent to kill him, if you can believe this, but the assassin's employer himself has been assassinated. So of course he won't be able to make that final payment. So Astuto obviously manages to not get assassinated by doing a deal with his assassin, that the assassin sent to kill him. And then we're back to Nick Jarvis, and he's got Kurt into his office. And we realise that obviously, you know, Fabian and people wondering about Warbury finishing fourth in the table, you know, is Kurt under pressure? But with Nick, he's quick to tell Kurt that he's not going to be sacked, but he's told the squad needs changes. Kurt's then immediately he speaks to youth team coach Scrapper, finding out that Fabian's son Romeo is just 19, and of course a young Todd Openshaw is 15, but he will be 16 in November. Callum Angelo is next to meet Kurt as Kurt breaks the news that his playing days are basically over, but he would like Callum to be his assistant coach to help him with guiding the new youthful team. Obviously, I think Romeo and Todd are going to become vital members of that team. And therefore, then we've moved, as we do with Pete Nash, completely to, off on a tangent, shall we say. And we see Fabian now is giving fatherly advice to Romeo, and he's telling his son that he should not be containing himself to just one woman, unlike his father. And then we're into the comedy.
Hello, Nick.
And then we're into the comedy that is Eric Openshaw, and Eric's obviously he's had, I don't know how many scrapes with death, and I think he's had 2 heart attacks, and so he's trying to lose weight, so he's taking part in walking football, and he's playing a match of walking football, and as he's playing, though, he's fouled straight away and he's hacked down, and everybody actually thinks that he's had another heart attack as he's not moving on the ground, and they send for a defibrillator, and of course they put the defibrillator on him, and this, can you believe, makes Eric's right leg stretch out, and bang, guess what? Let's say he manages to kick the opponent that had hacked him down in a place where nobody wants to be kicked. Then on the next pages, we see Bertha telling her husband Scrapper that she's pregnant with 10 twins. Then we see Vanessa rushing to the hospital to be told that she's too late. And Vanessa is assuming that Eric has died. She's distraught and she's on her knees. But then she's only to be told that no, Eric's not died. He's discharged himself against doctor's orders and he's gone home. That's why you've missed him. So again, classic Pete, as we see Vanessa. And then you can imagine Vanessa's gone from tears and worried about the loss of Eric to, I'm going to get home and kill him. When she gets home, Eric is sat on the sofa, relaxing with one of his favourite snacks. And of course, he feels the wrath of Vanessa as she snatches the snack, and she tells him from now on, he will only be having fruit and nuts. And then we're back with Romeo de Gusson, and he's in a nightclub and he's out celebrating. He scored 2 goals in a pre-season friendly on his debut. And there he is, surrounded by two attractive young ladies paying extra attention to Romeo. But he keeps telling them, as he said to his father, that he's in love and he has a girlfriend. They suggest a nightcap at his hotel, but Romeo, no, he's not like his father, and he says no, he has a girlfriend. But suddenly the 2 ladies are whispering something in his ears, and then in the next panel we see Romeo with his arm round both the waists of the young ladies, and he's heading out of the nightclub, and he breaks the 4th wall, turning to us exclaiming, I just hope they don't have the handcuffs.
Oh, say, Dorothy Cotton. Hello, Nick. Oh.
So Romeo's a Romeo after all.
Exactly. Of course, Striker fans don't need me to tell this, but any other listeners that aren't au fait with the Striker story, these stories move at a rapid pace. And then we're on to the next page. We're at the antenatal clinic where Bertha and Scrapper bump into Emma and Callum Angelo. Obviously, they're expecting the birth of their first child. And then, can you believe, we see Ingrid Panzer, the manager's wife, there as well at the clinic. And then we're back, we move on from that, and we're back with Nick and Lee, and they're discussing the assassinations and whether they are now safe, and if they could really enjoy a honeymoon on Astuto's yacht. And then we're back with Kurt's wife, Ingrid, and of course, all the fans will know that Kurt Panzer works on a very rigid timescale and schedule. So Ingrid has found the perfect moment to break the news to Kurt that he is to be a father, as he would say. And then we see Eric at the breakfast table, and he's eating walnuts, and he's trying to get his son Todd to give him a biscuit, but he's doing as he's told. And then we suddenly, when he's eating these walnuts, we see his face swell and he collapses to the floor. Vanessa screaming down the phone for an ambulance. At the same time, Fabian Degussian is then in Kurt's office, and the German manager breaks the news to Fabian that he is sacking him as his assistant immediately, but he wants him to manage the ladies' team. Again, I'm not going to go into the details, but there's some fantastic to-in and fro-in from Kurt there and Fabian. I mean, Fabian Deguusson being the manager of the Warburys ladies' team. It's just classic Pete Nash. And of course, now obviously we're left there wondering what's happened to Eric Openshaw. And we then see a panel, and of course we see the sign Warbury District Hospital, and we find out that Eric has suffered an anaphylactic shock. And the last panel we see Vanessa telling Eric that I love you, you big daft lummox, with a peck on his cheek, which always gets a smile from Eric. So we've got players having their first children births. We've got Callum is going to become an assistant manager. We've got Fabian moving on to be the ladies manager, and we've got young Romeo and Todd Openshaw looking like they are going to be breaking into the first. And well, Fabian's already made his appearance, but obviously Todd hopefully breaking into the first team squad as well. And then we cut to a Nick Jarvis looking, as he always does, cool in a t-shirt and Gino-styled shorts on the jetty with his arm around the shoulder of a stunning looking Lee Ming in a lovely red dress. Nick says to Lee, it's been a heck of an adventure, Lee. Lee's response is been with a question mark. And then as we see, the yacht pulls off into the sunset with the couple standing on the bow with Lee saying, what makes you think it's over? And that takes us up to pages 91. And then on page 92 and 93, Pete Nash gives us 20 of his favourite striker tales. But from page 94 onwards, it's all new content. But like like Pete Nash at his best, I should say, we're going to save that for part 2. Because as Pete knew better than anybody, always keep them wanting more until it really is the end.
Wow. That's superb. Brilliant stuff. Well done, Tangent.
That is
Wow.
mad. Is
Yeah.
is that the order that it was? If you done that like in order?
Chronological order of the pages. Yeah, yeah. He's brilliant. He's just,
It's so
yeah,
layered, isn't it? And so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
intertwined.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
It's
Sorry, Simo, we've just
it's
lost you a bit
crazy,
there,
isn't it? You're
unfortunately.
back
Yeah,
all over the place.
yeah. I mean, if it,
I've just said it. It's crazy. It's jumping. It's all over the place, isn't it? But in a good way because
uh,
it's keeping it fresh.
do you know something? And I'm gonna say this, and I tell you what, I don't know, and I hope Pete, if he does listen, he appreciates this. But there's two things that come to mind, and one's quite much maligned, but it's Dan Brown, in his books, and Dan Brown
Oh yeah,
sometimes he has chapters which are just literally 2 pages. In fact, I think in the Da Vinci Code, I seem to remember, one chapter which is just one page, and because it's taken you from the story. But I often, when I was reading this to put this together for the pod, the one name that really came to my mind was Quentin Tarantino, and the way Tarantino's, I think of like Pulp Fiction, that the opening scene of the movie when they're in the cafe and they
yeah,
step up Tim Roth to do the robbery, and then it cuts, and you're wondering what the hell's that all about, and then all of a sudden later on in the movie we see Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta walk into that cafe, and you're like, wow,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
those pages there, you've got Eric, at the breakfast table collapsing with an anaphylactic shock. Obviously, we're not sure, but the next page, we're
Well,
in
you did
Kurt's
explain that
office.
earlier, didn't you? When his legs
Yeah,
shot out, he got too close to somebody's nuts.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's
He's obviously
so
got a nut
well put
allergy.
together. Yeah, it's didn't have any trouble in cracking them though. But yeah, it's just so well put together. It really is.
Wow,
Right.
that's brilliant and very well told there, Paul, as well. And yeah, it's something for wherever our listeners haven't purchased the book yet, then there's
Did well to get through that.
Yeah,
there's go out and buy it, and
yeah,
we'll cover part 2 and the rest of it in a future pod.
yeah. And as we said though, some spoilers on there because I am going to delve into the new content. So if you haven't got your edition yet, just be aware of that. We will be covering that in part 2. But we are an independent podcast, so but trust me, volume 26 does not let any Striker fan down. So if you haven't got it yet, get your hands on a copy.
Excellent
Is
stuff.
my advice.
Excellent stuff. Brilliant stuff. Right. Well, thank you. Thanks for that. Let's move on then to the next item on the pod. If I can just can't get myself ready. Oh.
Whilst Matt's doing that, I shall do a bit of prelim. So as he's already said, he's going to do the footballer who wouldn't stay dead. And so obviously we're going to be really delving into the realms of fiction on this one, aren't we, Matt? I believe.
Yeah. I'm just hold a second. I'll let it all this out.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Oh, I pressed the wrong button somewhere, haven't I? Oh, that's better. Right.
I don't know. Have you got a note for? Does it tell you if you got the time so you know when to go to sort of cut it out?
No, I've made a note of it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. So, the footballer who wouldn't stay dead. Right. So it's I'll start taking you through this. So as I said earlier in the introduction, this is in Roy of The Rovers, and it ran from the 29th of March 1980 to the 21st of August 1982. So just over 2 years. Actually replaced The Boy Who Hated Football. I don't know if I know, Simmo, you didn't really read Roy of The Rovers. Have you heard of that, Paul? The Boy Who Hated Football.
I know the title of the story. I
Yeah.
must admit, it's not a story. I'm not as familiar with
Can
The
you
Boy
guess
Who
what it's
Hated
about?
Football. I'm guessing it might be a boy that really just didn't like football. Just
Sorry, hold on a second. You're telling me you've never read it?
I
How
know,
can you?
I know. I just amazing how I figured that one out.
I think it does what it says on the tin, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It
completely.
kind of does.
Yeah,
It is
I
the
do
Roy
remember
Seal
seeing the
story.
title, but it wasn't one that caught my attention, so it wasn't one that I read.
No, no, yeah. I won't cover it. Maybe I'll cover that from a future pod.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the artist was Tony Harding, but I want you to kind of have a look at the art there and say, do you think that's Tony Harding, or do you? Anyway, let's leave that for a second.
Yeah.
I don't know who.
Yeah,
I don't know who.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know who the author was. Maybe we'll ask Barry at some point
Yeah.
if he
That's
remembers.
interesting.
But yeah, the main protagonist of the story was somebody called Mel Deakin, and yeah, I'll cover the actual story. It's about a ghost, but I'm sharing the screen for listeners' sake, so Simmo and Tangent can see it. And what you've got there, you've got a stormy night, and there's somebody being struck by lightning in a tracksuit. And the wording's really good. I think it's a fantastic, actually, first week. The story really kind of pulls you in, really. It goes, out of the stormy night sky, the vivid finger of crackling fire struck in a blinding flash of fury. It enveloped young Mel Deakin in brilliant light. The boy fell, and you see Mel on the floor, and you see this kind of ghostly figure is just rising up from him in an old football kit.
Yeah.
And then what happens is then you get transported. The panel moves then to an old football ground, and it says the open heathland disappeared, and in its place rose the gaunt stands and terraces of a long vanished football ground. And there's a couple of fans there going, "Look at that lad! He's a genius! Look at him go! He's a genius!" And the other fellas going, "Show them how it's done, Andy." And the cheers swell to crescendo sound, and you see this footballer just smacking it with his left foot straight into the top of the net, and the crowd are saying, "Go!" And that's it. Andy's 200th goal for Farnwood.
Wow.
And he's running off, and he's going, "I've done it. 200 goals, 200." But then we flash back to the first scene we saw, and there's a couple of people they're over the body of the boy who's been struck by lightning, and they're going, "What did he say?" The man saying to the woman, "What did he say?" And she goes, "It sounded like 200. It doesn't make sense, but at least he's alive." And then we move on to there's a hospital, and you've got a doctor there, and he's talking to clearly his parents, saying, "Your son is all right, Mrs. Deakin. He's burned and badly shocked, but no worse." The father says, "We'd like to see him if you may, doctor." And he's sleeping, and the doctor's talking to the father, and he says, "It's quite remarkable. Another chap was struck by lightning at the very same spot about 80 years ago. I'm afraid he was killed. Apparently there was a football club out there, and this chap was playing in a match when the lightning hit him. I think his name was Andy Steele. It was a tragedy." And you got Mel in the bed going, Andy Steele."
Can I just interject there, because this has come up in the pod before. So obviously, if people aren't familiar with this story, but might be familiar with the Playmaker story, the lead character in that is also called Andy Steele. But the Andy Steele in this story actually has an E at the end of the surname Steele. So there's a slight differential in the name, but obviously when you pronounce them both sound the same. Sorry, it's come up a couple of times over the pods.
It is unusual. Two famous characters from the comic that have the same sounding name. So yeah, you're right. So the story continues. I won't go through it frame by frame, but he makes a good recovery. He goes straight into the library once he's recovered, and he pulls out a book, A History of British Football, and he finds Andy Steele. So there's a write-up about Andy Steele playing for Farnwood FC, from 1895 to 1901. And yeah, he recognizes him. That's the player he saw in his dream. But then he comes out of the hospital, well, actually out of the library, sorry, and he says he feels different. He feels as if he's got some of Andy Steele's football skill in him. Immediately, he feels that. And then he gets the next following few panels. He goes to talk to an old guy. Looks like David Carradine figure out of Kung Fu. If anybody remembers that,
Grasshopper.
70s. Yeah. I don't know where he's found him. He's just talking about any old person basically, and he's going, yeah. And this old guy, he said, yeah, when I was 5 years old, when I saw Andy Steele play, and I'm telling you, he was the greatest player ever to wear Potter boots. Magic he was. He made the ball do tricks. And he talks to a milkman who seems to remember his dad talking about him as well. Anyway, so Mel's better. Then what you find with the story is he's actually he looks really old. Actually, when I say the artwork, he doesn't look like a schoolboy, but he is actually a schoolboy.
Yeah.
I'll talk about the artwork in just a second. But he goes back to school, and the school had been quite, they've just dropped him. So he's been struck by lightning, and sorry, tough. Sorry, Mel, you didn't turn up for training. What's your excuse? And so
one strike and you're out.
Exactly.
Brilliant. There's no free strikes, but then lightning doesn't strike 3 times.
I was a bit slow on the uptake there, Simmo. Sorry, I'm out of practice with you not being here.
So anyway, so he's been put down as substitute. So he does get changed, and he puts his kit on. And he looks in the mirror and he goes, "Actually, I look a bit like Andy Steele, but I'm going to play like him. I know something's happened to me." And that's the end. That's the end of the first week. Now, that first week, even though the artist, said the artist is Tony Harding. If you then look at the second week, it is actually Tony Harding.
Tony Harding,
yeah. The first week, that's Barry Mitchell.
That's different.
I was going to say, do you know what? I didn't want to. That's my immediate thought, Matt. I thought that looks like Barry Mitchell to me.
Because Mel Deacon there looks like.
Yeah.
He looks like Steve Marks, and he looks like Roy Race in 1992 or something like that. So I mean, you do see this over the years that first or second episodes are drawn by different artists.
Interesting,
for whatever reason. But so Tony Harding the second week. I don't know if any readers would have spotted it at the time. Maybe not. But it's a completely different artist, and it's the same artist now, Tony Harding.
Right the way through, is it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what we have is he's substitute for. Go on.
I know. I was just going to say, do you know what? I just wonder sometimes if some of these stories are like that are ideas, and you get kind of the initial couple of pages, and they're floated. So they might have got Barry Mitchell to draw them, or an artist. But then when they've decided, well, actually, as we've mentioned before, Barry was quite ruthless with the readers voting, and then said, right, we're going to drop a story, and this was one of the ideas, and it's pulled, and then they said, well, Barry Mitchell, the artist, is tied up with other things, and then they bring Tony Harding in, who might have been freer of projects to then, do this one going forward. Maybe I think chat with Barry about.
Well, let's ask him. But you know what? I think he probably bang on. Yeah, that's the sort of thing. That's probably the way it would work, wouldn't it? They have these stories ready. Can you just do this for us? Draft this up for us and have a look at it.
Yeah.
But then slotting it into the timetable of what other work has Tony got on, has Barry got on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, good point. But yeah, we will ask him. So basically, Mel is sub for the game. But what you find is, so on the second page of this one, is he feels as if Andy Steele's actually there within him. Like when he came out of the library, he feels different. And this is really quite important because later on in the story, it changes. This feels as if it's almost like a Billy Dane type Billy's Boots.
Yeah.
When he's got Deadshot Keen as he's making him run.
Does it have a feel of Billy's Boots about it?
Yeah.
It can easily, and that kind of makes me think Fred Baker could have easily wrote this, but I don't know.
It is very interesting because I am familiar with the story, but as I've said, although I've got all the editions, that this isn't a story that was in. I haven't read the beginning, so this is the first I'm seeing it. And as you said, Matt, this is not the story that I'm familiar with. It does change.
It changes because what it moves into, he actually gives him advice. And so he's not, but at the first couple of weeks, it looks as if actually Andy Steele was actually really inside his body, and he's kind of making him run into certain directions, certain positions, that kind of thing. And in this one, so he actually makes him run to the far post, and he nips in and he scores a goal at the far post, and he feels as if Andy's made him actually run there. Whereas actually at the end of the game, he actually asked for a mirror off of a woman who seems to strangely be in the dressing room, and he looks at it and he goes, but it's me, it's Mel Deacon, I know I'm Andy Steele, but I can't be. He's dead. And then just as the game's about to start off again, he hears someone talk to him and he goes, Mel, I must talk to you. And he turns around and you then have the ghost of Andy Steele saying, it's all right, Mel. No one can see me. No one but you, that is. And he goes, Andy Steele, it's a ghost. Like ghost, like Scooby-Doo or something.
Rent a ghost.
Ghost.
Or might read go
run around.
So there you go. So then and I won't go through every single page here, but what you find is he's a schoolboy, Mel Deacon, so it's similar, I say the B Dane and Tommy's Troubles, it's that kind of thing. He's trying to get into a school team and he still's appearing quite a lot. His mum does actually catch him talking to someone at one point, but then that comes in later on in the story, and there's lots of flashbacks when Andy's talking to Mel. There's a couple of characters in there that take an instant dislike, and this is what you find throughout comic stories over time. There's no rhyme or reason for it, but somebody takes an instant dislike to one of our heroes for whatever reason. So in this one, you've got a guy called Sidney Clip who doesn't like Mel. He's scoring loads of goals, but for some reason he doesn't like him, so he won't put him in the team. What happens is, now I've flicked over, it's now September 1980, and it's a lot of it. You've got Andy Steele there who's actually telling the story of his career. That's what it kind of says. Lots of dreamlike sequences, and you're going backwards. He talks about when he used to train through the forest and when he help him swerve, dribbling in between the trees, and that's what it commonly was. They do a lot of kicking outside. There must have been a barn outside Mel's house.
I remember that. Yeah,
there's always this
like
brick wall. They're always
kicking
up against a brick wall. And I'm showing on the screen here. There's a cover. So the cover story.
I remember this cover.
Yeah, it's a great cover. And you've got Golly Andy. Don't forget we're only practicing. That's it in the barn there. So he's finally chosen for the second team against a team of bigger boys, and this is where on these shots on the screen here, Andy told him how to do a pretend kick, and so Andy would tell him to do something. What could be how to kick the ball, how to do a feint, how to drop a shoulder, and then he'd try it in a match. Yeah, then he'd try it in a match, and invariably it always worked. So here he's checked and he pretended to kick the ball. The player turned the wrong way, and then he's away. But you've got Sidney Clip there who's still thinking, oh, he's going to fall over his feet or something like that. Never mind, he's just through on goal. Ended up in this particular match, they win 6-0. Mel scored 2 goals, but still, if Sidney Clip didn't want to put him in the actual team, he's really got something against him. On the second page here, there you go. So Andy told him how to just stop dead, and so in some of the stories you've got, and it's a bit like Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi or Yoda. Suddenly you got Andy talking to him. No, Mel, stop suddenly now. And he goes, that's Andy. And so he stops and then throws the player the wrong way, and then he scores a goal. And I say that quite a lot of time he's acting like a bit of a mentor really for Mel, not even just through football. So in these shot on the screen here, and this one's quite interesting. He actually talks a bit about the history of football. So that's you probably you're talking to the readers there about the history of football. You've got a scene there from medieval England where they're kicking the ball through, and then they show people used to do a throw one-handed, where the crossbar used to be a line across the top. So they're interweaving the game's history and social history into some of these stories as well as say Andy being like a father figure, not even just through football, but you'll see later on, for helping Mel with his emotions. So I said he still wouldn't get picked, struggling to get picked for the school team. He actually gets he'd get picked for a trial for the county team, and again, invariably there would be Mel would ask Andy, did you ever get picked for a county team? And never did Andy go, no, it never happened. Because that probably would have been a really short story that week.
Yeah.
Just go, well, actually, funny you should say that, Mel. Yeah, there was this one time when, and invariably it would go on, and it would work well. They went on the school tour of France in May '81. This was quite strange as well. This is where, so this is one of the occasions where he was having trouble with his temper. He was losing his temper in the match. I think he was getting bullied by some of the French kids, and so Andy then kind of told him, you kind of need to keep your temper in check, sort of thing. And then later on, he was scared because he didn't want to play against one of the French team because there was like really tough tactics, and he's saying he was scared as well. So Andy kind of helped him through that, saying basically, you need to face up to it. In the last game of the tour, this is a bit strange. There was actually a plane crash. There was a plane crash at half time. A plane crashed into the stadium and then landed in the field. Mel then saves somebody from a wreck. The plane then explodes. He does talk to Andy, and he said, "Yeah, did anything similar to happen to you?" And he goes, "Well, actually, no, it wasn't an aeroplane because there wasn't airplanes." But there was this situation where a horse escaped and bolted, and Andy saved, he managed to rein back the horse, and he got a medal for it. And so Mel here is going, "Oh wow, crumbs! I wonder if I'll get a medal. That'd be great." But then what was weird is that story. That's the end of the story. You don't see the next week. You don't see him get a medal. That was it.
Brilliant.
Oh dear. So I'll flick through a couple of these, because then what happened then is, he ends up playing for the third team. He's still struggling to get in the school team. Then there's a major change in the actual story. This is in October '81. The family moves to Scotland. The father kind of says, actually, Mel, we need to talk to you because we bought a new home in Scotland, because he had to move because of his job. He does actually say, I wonder if I'll ever see Andy again. And he always kind of says that, I wonder if I'll ever see Andy, but he always turns up. He always kind of thinks as if like a ghost can't suddenly appear somewhere.
Yeah.
So they move into a house which does look like, and we mentioned Scooby-Doo earlier, it does look like one of the houses from Scooby-Doo, if you see on the screen.
The haunting house on the hill, yeah.
It really does, yeah. Even inside, it looks like, you'd expect to see Fred and Vilma and everybody inside there trying to hide from the ghosts. So he starts a new school. Obviously, they're in Scotland, so there's a bit of a hard. I don't want an English kid in the school team. And then he mentions where he's living, and he says, "I live in," and this is what's called Dunevil House. Dunevil House. And I go, "Oh, Dunevil House. Ooh, you're not playing football with us if you live there." He goes, "What's wrong with that?" He goes, "Dunevil House is haunted, man. You'll have the curse of the McTays down on you." So there's a curse.
Well,
that's a Scottish accent,
by scared of ghosts, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Brought his own ghost with him.
Yeah. Oh dear. So they're sitting down. They're sitting down at the dining room table. This is the family now. So the Deakin family. It's a really grand dining room table.
Yeah, it really is actually.
It's like something like Downton Abbey or something like that. Isn't it? And he mentions the fact that they're saying it could be haunted. But anyway, the story kind of continues. He's trying to get into the school team again. We have this trying to get in the school team. He doesn't play well in the first half of the trial. And the pupils know that he lives in this cursed house, this haunted house. And so one of the kids actually tells him about the story of why it's haunted. And there's some cattle rustlers, or Highland cattle rustlers, the McKays, that used to have the house. And then they picked on this monk who's dressed up like a monk. And they're going to attack him, but he puts a curse on them, and then they die. The McTays die because the chimney falls on top of them. So that's why the house has been cursed. And so everybody who's lived in the house since then has been cursed with bad luck. And one of his schoolmates said, and Mel goes, well, actually, we're fine. We've been here a few weeks now. We'd be fine. And one of these schoolmates go, I wouldn't say that. You just missed an open goal in the first half. So, I mean, equating missing an open goal to having a chimney fall on you and kill you.
Yeah.
Probably
Similar.
yeah.
Very, very similar. Very
bad
similar.
luck, I suppose, yeah. He plays better in the second half. And, and they think he's brilliant. He's scores with a header, and then he makes a goal for one of the other players with a great back heel. So he's probably going to get in the team. What happens again? You have somebody who takes an instant dislike to him. It's the player who's going to be kicked out of the team. He gets wind of it. Jamie McPhee. He then tries to scare him by dressing up as a ghost. And you're right, Simmo. Probably the last person in the world is going to be faced by another ghost. Yeah. Anyway, they end up having a bit of a fight. And then, they kind of make up, and this Jamie McPhee is okay with him taking his place in the team. Now, then we introduced to a trainer, a Scottish trainer, and again, Mel says to Andy, "Well, did you ever have a really, strict trainer?" And guess what he did as well. So he tells him the story of the trainer who was really strict with him. But anyway, Mel meets this trainer, and he does a classic frozen medicine ball at him in the gym, like they always seem to do. I don't know about you guys, but when I started secondary school, I was in this fear that somebody's going to throw a medicine ball at me, because every film I'd seen is that when you go do PE, the first one in PE in secondary school, you get a medicine ball thrown at you. Do you remember that?
Well, I will just briefly break and go off on a tangent. I do remember one of my secondary school I went to was actually a basketball school, and some of a couple of years ahead of me, we had two guys actually made it to be squad players in the NBA. So it did have an amazing, we're really good at the time. The 2 years above me, but our PE teacher was the head of the London squad, and about 5 of our players were in the London squad. And I remember us with not that PE teacher, but a different PE teacher. We were all lined up against the wall, and he was bouncing this basketball, and 2 of my mates were talking, and he just turned around and launched this basketball at their head, and it did miss them. But I tell you what, I mean, that is close to 40 odd years ago now, and I remember that as if it was yesterday. And I remember the whole of us just turning around as the whack off the wall as this ball bounced off, and it missed the heads. Well, it felt like, inches at most, but I remember there was no talking after that in any of the PE lessons. I can assure you of that.
Oh dear, hey.
Yeah, nowadays they'd have been suing the teacher, wouldn't they?
I was going to say, teaching in the 80s was very different.
And that's why I'm not going to mention any names, because
well, I think that's probably quite wise. So Mel in the end gets picked for the school team, so he manages to impress the strict trainer, that's Mr. Spencer. So all's going well. And we have Christmas 1981. He gets a book on the great players of the past, and Andy's in that as well. Then we move on to January 82, and they're outside again, and they're kicking it again against the same brick wall.
It's funny, isn't it? Now they've moved to Scotland, but it's still that background of the brick wall when they're training.
Same brick wall.
Yeah, it's quite funny.
Wall with him.
That's a point. We're just brick by brick. Now, this is when suddenly 2 boys get suspicious, because they actually hear him talking to someone. So all this time so far, nobody. His mum was a bit dubious at the start. I heard him talking, but he's just saying to Andy, he's going, "I must go, Andy, or I'll be late. Thanks for telling me that story about Alistair Slater." He told another story which I won't bore you with. And he goes, "Okay, Mel, see you later." Now, there's 2 other kids. They could hear him, and they go, "Who was Mel Deakin just talking to just now? I don't know. There's no one outside. Perhaps he was talking to himself. There's no one else in sight. Mel Deakin's not that daft, but he was talking, There's some mystery about him." Meanwhile, Mel had walked on, and he'd met his mate, Wally Slater, and he goes, yeah, he's found out a bit about his long lost cousin in that football book which he got for Christmas, and he's going, "Oh, that's great, that's great." But then he's whispering in the class, and he gets told off by the teacher, and for that he gets dropped from the team.
It
So
didn't take much in them days, did it?
You know what I found as well is whenever somebody would do something in class and they'd have a detention, it was always the same night that the football training was on.
Football training
they were
was
just
on.
about they were just about to pick a team,
or there was a key quarter-final cup match or something like that meant that they couldn't play in. Yeah,
it was never right. Okay, Deacon, you need to stay behind tonight, do 100 lines, and you go, yeah, that's fine because I've got football practice tomorrow. It was never that. It was always football practice. Anyway, so these two kids are still. The story moves on, and they talk to this Wally Slater, and he goes, "Hey, Wally, you go around with Deacon. Does he talk to himself? I mean, is there anything funny about him?" And Wally goes, "Of course, there's nothing funny about him. Mel's a great lad. You must be potted to ask a thing like that." Anyway, they decide to follow him. Now, Mel then he's running, and he sees Andy, and Andy goes, "Hello, Mel. How's it going?" "Not bad, Andy. I'm in the school team for the cup match tomorrow, and we've been having shooting practice. Let's go and have a kick around." We go, "Okay, we've got about 10 minutes before it gets dark." And so the two boys now followed, and they're actually outside the Scooby-Doo house. And they're going, "I can see Deacon, but I can't see anyone else." They're going around the back of the house. "We'll have to get nearer." So they get nearer, and they're going, "He's playing footer in the dark." It's, "What's footer?" I mean, I've never called it footer. I think I've said this before. They're playing footer in the dark. And they go, "He's either really keen or potty. Where's the other chap? I mean, we heard him talking to someone just now." And then you flash to Andy and Mel. And Andy's going, "If the ball comes to you and you're standing sideways to the goal, you've got to fall back to hit it on the volley. Throw it, and I'll show you." So he's demonstrating how he kind of would lean back to volley the ball. And so Mel's trying to do what Andy's told him.
So at this point, the ghost is actually kicking the ball?
Yeah, he's definitely kicking the ball. Definitely kicking the ball. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. And you see this in the bushes.
Wow,
the
wait,
two boys.
wait. I've read that panel ahead of you, so I can't wait for this next bit. Go on, Matt.
In the bushes, the watching boys were puzzled. How did that ball get past Deacon just then? There would have been this sort of bouncing ball just in the air. How did the ball get past him? I mean, it just came over right for him to boot. And you go, "Yeah, there must be a wall on the far side," and he bounces the ball off it. I mean, they're not the brightest, these kids, are they?
No,
Because at one point you've got, pretty sure, yes, in the next shot you've got Andy actually holding the ball, so you can have a ball.
There's a ball suspended in midair.
But anyway, Andy.
Can you imagine if that had been these days? All them kids would have been getting visits from social workers and all sorts, wouldn't they? "Do you need some medication? Are you okay?"
Yes, "Hey Mel, there's someone hiding in the bushes over there." This is what Andy's saying. "They're spying on us." And so they've clocked them, and so they thought, right, okay, we're going to give them a broadside. So 1, 2, 3, and they boot both balls at them, and they hit them. So they got a good shot, and they just run off. I mean, obviously surely that can't be the end of it. You wouldn't just run off, would you? So
No. But then I've got to be honest with you. Actually, if a ball got booted at me from nowhere, as in I couldn't see you booted it, I think I would have run off and just, I'm not sure what I would have done.
What would you have done?
I don't think I'd have told anybody, and I definitely wouldn't have been going back there.
What was that, Simmo?
Yeah, good luck explaining that one to anybody. Well, I was just stood there behind a hedge in this ball. There was nobody there, and it just came out of nowhere and hit me in the face.
Yeah. Bosh.
Like, okay, fair enough. Yeah, you've been sniffing glue again.
Yeah. So anyway, they're still on the scent of him. So the two players, they're following Mel again, and they go, "There's Deacon. Right, if he starts practicing fancy shots tonight, we've got him." Because what they've got a camera. So even though this is 1981, cameras are still around. So even if it's dark, the flashlight will show them up. Go, "Shh, get down, coming out again with a ball. His pal will show up soon too, I hope." And so you can see Mel, and they've got the camera, and they're getting ready. Mel's got no idea the boys are watching. He's talking to Andy. He goes, "I scored a good goal in practice, Andy, using the kick on the volley that you taught me." And Andy goes, "Let's try it again then. It's not an easy shot, and you can't have too much practice at it." and he's doing it again. Mel against, looks like it's different. There's loads of walls around this house.
Yeah,
That's a good thing about the big house. Lots of walls.
lots of balls to hit the ball
So
against.
he's volleying the ball against, and he's going, that's really good. I'm getting the hang of it. But then, hey, there's someone over there in the bushes. And then suddenly you turn around and they're taking a picture. Got him. The flash goes off. Let's go. And they run over the wall and they're off. Right. So they get clear and they're talking to each other. Well, it won't be long before we know who gives him secret footer lessons. You go, yeah. I had the film developed by Saturday. This was 1981.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say,
this
yeah.
is probably this is
No
it's stuck in
digital
the true
cameras.
print, stuck in the true print envelope, and
Should have got a
hopefully
Polaroid.
Yeah.
should have got a Polaroid. Oh, that Polaroid. That was like science fiction, wasn't it? That was. Yeah. So anyway, go back to the school match. Mel's playing in the school cup tie, and he's playing really well. He scores. He crosses the ball, and I know they score. And meanwhile, the two schoolboys have got their photo developed, and they're looking at it and go, I don't believe it. Let's have a look. And you can't see anything. It hasn't shown up in the picture there. All you can see is Mel holding the ball. And like, oh, the other person had to be on the photo. What do we do now? And I go, we'll show it to Deakin and see what he says about it. There's something funny going on. So still they can't get to the bottom of it. Mel gets dropped from the school team and he ends up actually playing for another team called Wayside Wanderers.
Yeah.
And they ends up playing for Rathbone School. But on this page here, I'm showing again, or some other boys now hear about the potentially that he's talking to a ghost, and they're hanging outside the house, and Mel and Andy get they hear about this, and so they think, right, we're going to try and frighten them off, and so they do the classic thing, is they put a tablecloth over Andy to scare them off, and it does. So he's just so they're still trying to keep him off the scent. Again, two other boys here, he was talking to Andy, so he's not very good at kind of keeping this a secret at all, really. This whole talking to a ghost story. Two schoolboys then go to try and talk to an old woman who's supposedly a witch, who will tell them how they can catch a ghost. They go to see this old woman, Miss Rackfee, and says, catch a ghost? Are you boys trying to be funny? She goes, no, miss, I thought you might know. Some people say you're a witch. And she goes, right, you boys cut that grass for me, all of it, and I'll tell you something that will be of value to you. So they all go and cut the grass. An hour later, they go, right, what is it? How do we catch a ghost? And she goes, I'll tell you this, you nitwits, there are no such thing as ghosts or witches. Now clear off before I turn you into frogs. Go on, get out of it. But yeah, she's not a witch, and they don't find out about catching a ghost. So the story moves on, and again, we've got Andy. We've got the two boys here, and we say, how do you think Mel? Sorry, how do we make Mel think you've caught his ghostly friend? Oh, sorry, this is the new idea they've got, is that they're going to catch the ghost, and they want Mel to think that they've caught the ghost. And so they see him talking, and he's playing again with Andy, and this time he's kicking the ball past Andy, and he's talking to himself again. But this time they actually approach him and they say, who are you talking to, Mel? We heard you. Yes, who's your friend? And Mel goes, no one. There's no one there. You can see yourselves. You go, there's someone there, Mel. He said, you shouldn't be talking out loud to yourself. We heard you. No, just buzz off. So they're really getting kind of closer and closer to this. They boot the ball away, and
this
Mel,
is brilliant.
Mel could see and hear Andy, but the others couldn't. And so Andy goes to get the ball. He goes, don't worry, Mel, I'll go to get it. And Mel's thinking, they won't see you, Andy, but they'll see the ball. So then you've got Andy is then doing keepy uppies. and he's going, hey, look at that. Did you see the ball suddenly jumped up in the air? This is what the boys are saying. And And Mel's going, what does Andy think he's up to? And Andy came back heading the ball, and now he's heading the ball now. And they're going, it's bouncing in midair by itself, and it's coming towards us. I don't like this. It's scary. And then Andy then boots the ball at them. I might as well give them something to remember me by. and now Mel's saying, you shouldn't have done that, Andy. You'll make them more curious than ever. And then he's like, I couldn't resist it. Did you see their faces? They couldn't believe it when I booted the ball at them. And now the boys are like, it's a ghost, all right. I mean, the way the ball came to us like a blooming bullet. What about catching them at night? You can see the ghosts in the dark. That's when they show up. So this is it. They've got a plan now to go and catch him at night.
Sorry, Matt. Before you move on, though, can we just sort of to the listeners? Obviously, we've got it on
the screen,
the big screen in the studio there. Obviously, but there's two fantastic panels when Andy Steele goes to retrieve the ball. In the first panel, when he's doing his keepy uppies, obviously there's a faint outline, so he's actually drawn in the panel, albeit faint, so that we know he's a ghost. But the second panel is brilliant as the two boy looks, and we just then do see the ball, don't we? And there's no faint outline of Andy Steele, and the ball's just bouncing where he's juggling or hedging it along. I mean, I've got to say, those are just two classic panels. They really are.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So now they try and catch him with a net, which doesn't kind of work. So they're still trying everything. I mean, I don't quite feel sorry for these boys now. It feels a bit like Home Alone, just trying to trying to get into the house, trying to get hold of it. They get the football net, and it still can't catch him. And then just look at So again, they're trying to they come up to Mel, and they're trying to get it out of Mel, these schoolboys, about what's actually going on. And you go, you tell us about him, or we can stay locked up. This is where they're saying that they've actually caught hold of Andy. They find these, they think they have, or they haven't, but they're trying to let Mel know they've actually caught hold of Andy. And they're saying to him, do you really know a ghost, Mel? Go on, tell us all about it. And he's like, you rotten lot. If you've got someone locked up, you better let them go, or I'll thump you. But then Andy comes out and he goes, steady on, Mel. They haven't got anyone locked up. They couldn't imprison me anyway. He's like, Andy. Go on, Mel. This is Andy now. He says, go on, Mel. Tell them all about me. They'll never see me as you do. So what does it matter? So Mel says, all right, I'll tell you. There is someone I talk to you. His name is Andy Steele. And the boys are like, Andy Steele? And Mel continues, he was a footballer and a brilliant one too. He was a professional about 70 years ago. And then you see a snippet of him scoring goals. And then you see the storm coming over, and he goes, oh, it looks stormy. Look at that lightning. The storm's coming nearer. And they're saying Andy Steele was 25 years old when he played his last game. And the boys are now listening to the story Mel's telling them, and he goes, Andy Steele's team went out to play in a storm. What happened? And Mel says, 5 minutes after the game began, there was a blinding flash of lightning. The lightning flash crackled down in a fiery light and hit Andy Steele. And then you see him being stretchered off. And the player, this is back in like Farmwood in 1901, going, is it bad? And one goes, he's dead. Just like that, he's dead. There's no mucking around, he's just dead. And the other one goes, oh no.
Oh no. That's what I love. He's dead. Oh no.
Darn.
So are we restarting this game now?
There's no subs in those days. They'd be terrible. I mean,
if you want treatment, get off the pitch.
I mean, Bert Chalkman, 54 years later, he carried on. You'd think, come on, Andy, soldier on. Anyway, stuff and nonsense. And then so he carries on. 70 years later, I was playing football at the same place. This is Mel talking again. It wasn't a professional ground any longer. It's just a pitch for kids to play. And then you get a flashback. And it's like, it's Mel Deakin. The lightning hit him. And Mel says, I was struck too, just as Andy had been all those years before. Even though, I will say here now, actually at the very start of the story, he wasn't actually playing football. He was in a tracksuit. But now suddenly he's playing football.
That's correct. Yeah, actually. Yeah.
In front of a crowd.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
We often say about the continuity of these things.
Yeah. It's easy to kind of put it to pieces. And then he talks about when they took him to hospital. And he goes, while I was unconscious, I saw Andy in a sort of dream. And so you can see the ghost of Andy there saying, "You'll make it, son. Funny how the same thing happened to you at the very same place too." And then he says, "I didn't know it was Andy Steele, but I looked up his name in the football book afterwards. Since then, I've often seen him, and he coaches me and tells me stories about football in the old days." So the boys are like, "Is that true?" "Of course it's true," says Mel. And they say, "Well, how does Andy still coach you? Show us some of the things he's taught you." And so Mel then shows him some of the bits, he showed him how he taught him how to do a body swerve, showed him how to kick the ball properly. And he says, "And he's taught me never to give in. In a football match, you've got to keep going for 90 minutes every game you play." That's it. So he's kind of told them everything. He said, "Look, this is how he's taught me. This is how he's helped me in life." He's just told them the whole truth. And they go, "I don't believe it. You've made it all up. You're joking." And he's like, "Well, you know what? Please yourself." So Mel was just left with his friend. And he said, "That was a great story you told them, Mel. I believed it. I thought they would too. I mean, you made it sound so convincing. I thought they'd believe it too." So none of them believed him, even his
What a
friends.
shock.
What a shock. Yeah, I know. Because you would, wouldn't you? I would.
Because you would, wouldn't you? Yeah, it's so believable. Yeah.
Well, my other mate had magic boots, so why wouldn't I believe that this guy's
Well,
he's got a ghost teaching him?
I mean, how gutting would it be if you played against Billy Dane and Mel Deakin?
Mel Deakin, yeah, crikey.
And he can't have been that much of a great coach, because in all them 2 years, he barely even made it into the school team.
That's a good point. So that evening, this is how the story ends. Mel was alone. Andy then comes back into the room. "Well, they know all about you, Andy. I told them." And Andy says, "It won't make any difference, Mel, because they don't believe you. They'll never believe you." And Mel says, "Will I still see you, Andy?" And Andy says, "You will, Mel. You're the only one who does believe in me. You and I will be friends for life." And then underneath that, we say, "Another super news story in next week's issue."
Yeah.
That is the end.
That's the end
of the football that wouldn't stay down. It's replaced by the wheelchair wonder,
which was just almost even more ridiculous story, if truth be told.
Well, we should do some sort of poll, couldn't we? If listeners want to vote for the most ridiculous story.
What are the craziest stories? Yeah, there were a few.
There were a few. But yeah, that's it. So that's it. What do you think, guys?
No, that was brilliant, and I love that. And do you know something? It's amazing because I think I have confessed on the pod in the past, at the time when I was reading the comics. I don't know what it was. Well, as I've kind of mentioned, I struggled to read anyway, and it was the comics that helped me with that. And obviously, being a lazy person, there was always two stories that I didn't read, and the footballer who wouldn't stay dead was in fact one of those stories. But you mentioned it there in the story, and what was really funny, and I've kind of mentioned this about the safest hands in soccer. I started to read then the footballer who wouldn't stay dead when Mel Deakin started to play for Wayside Wanderers, and not against his school, not for the school team Rathbone. And obviously, there's so much for you to cover there, Matt. I do appreciate it. But he does actually end up playing against Rathbone School and scoring for Wayside Wanderers. And for me, that was the bit that I zoned in when reading. And I think obviously I did find the kids trying to catch Andy Steele and all that just a little bit too ridiculous. But that's when the story captured me. But I've got to say, for some of the stories, I think they ended too abruptly. But I think that is one that probably the way they tied that up there with him coming clean to all the other school kids, telling them about Andy Steele, the ghost, and them not believing him, really probably was the best end, to the story. It was wrapped up quite nicely there, really.
And it showed what a waste of time that they were having, because they spent all that time convinced he was talking to somebody. Then when he finally admits he is, no, you weren't. I don't believe a word of it.
They should have come clean from the start, wouldn't they? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
It's funny revisiting it there as well, and the panels and the frames that you showed, and as you explained, and I think you said, and certainly Simmo mentioned, and we've kind of mentioned that at the time I never really put it together, but it really is a rehash of Billy's Boots, but just done in a different way. Because if you think about Billy Dane, he's got a big quarterfinal cup match or a big match against a rival, and then he pulls out the annuals of Deadshot Keen, and did Deadshot Keen ever play,
Yeah,
away in a
exactly.
ground, and he'd find the story and read the story. The difference with the footballer that wouldn't stay dead, it's Mel Dinkin talking to a ghost instead of finding a book. And as you said, Andy Steele would always turn around and say, "Well, actually, yes, I played in a quarterfinal, blah blah blah," and then went through the story. So it's quite interesting. And then we always wonder, and I'm a big fan of Billy's Boots, but we've had this. It's amazing, really. Every 2 months, it was just always about Billy's lost his boots, couldn't play
It's
football, then found them or somehow got them back. But with that, really, the background story there was all about these kids finding the ghost. And then Simo's just chuckled away there and said, the whole thing's ridiculous because at the end they didn't believe him. But once that part of the story was done, that was it really, because there's no boots or no ghost to be found. So story was
yeah,
done, wasn't it?
yeah,
But in a way, I find that one better than the Billy's Boots one because
Yeah,
it was less focused on the fact of the ghost or the boots or whatever it was that was helping the player be better, and
yeah,
more in the psychological effect it had on the people around him.
yeah, yeah,
Because if you just look at it purely from the point of, oh, Billy's got these magic boots, or like Andy Steele's a ghost, it's ridiculous.
yeah,
But
yeah,
by throwing that other bit in, well, you're seeing it from outside, from the other kid's point of view. That's the bit that actually kind of the suspension of disbelief kicks in a little bit more.
yeah. Yeah, and also there, Simone, you kind of joked about it, that he's got all this training, but he still couldn't really get in the school team or was struggling. But that was the point. Whereas Billy Dane, when he had Deadshot King's boots, I mean, he should have been an England schoolboy, right? He was an amazing footballer with Deadshot King's boots on. But with Mel Deakin, in actual fact, he was just an average schoolboy footballer. But with the coaching of Andy Steele, he was
Yeah,
making him better. And at the end, the story there when he plays for Wayside Wanderers, he does start scoring and he is getting a better play. But in that last page, Matt, when you went over it, when he shows the other kids the body swerve, he also does a shot and says about Andy Steele telling him to, get his foot over the ball and, head over the
yeah,
ball and stuff. But he does actually then also mention, but I don't always get it right, of course. So again, like you said to me, it's mad. Is there was that element of realism to it as well?
yeah,
Because just getting the advice from the
yeah.
ghost didn't
As
make him
far
a great
fetched as
player.
it is,
Yeah,
it's not as ridiculously far fetched as Billy's Boots,
yeah,
because he's still. It's not like he's suddenly transformed because the guy's talking to him. Whereas Billy's Boots, he puts the boots on, and he's like, yeah, he's gone from like nothing to like can't
yeah,
miss.
yeah. Well, what I
And
tell you what,
it's
sorry, Simo, to
all right.
interrupt, but I was just going to say I'm not sure because I know you haven't read the Tigers and the Roy of the Rovers like we have. But the thing I always loved about Billy's Boots, which I just thought was absolutely classic, was in the off season. He played cricket.
yeah. I
And
know.
Deadshot Keen also played cricket, but the boots made Billy Dane also bowl better. Which is just,
Wow,
it's just really, you talk about
wow,
stretch the story.
yeah.
But I thought you'd
Uh,
enjoy that, Simo.
You know what the crazy thing is as well? When I was going through, when I was trying to catch up on Roy of the Rovers, obviously I was following. I tend to look at the stories unless they're done particularly for comic effect, like Mighty Mouse or The Hard Man. Then
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't mind the fact it's not realistic because I know it's like tongue in cheek.
yeah,
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 But I always used to try and focus more on the more like the grounded stories and avoid the things like Billy's Boots or the ghost who wouldn't stay dead.
yeah.
Because I'm thinking, oh, I'm so much more immature
Yeah.
than to believe in all that bull crap. And yet I lap up Marvel movies like you wouldn't believe.
that's yeah. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
brilliant,
I know.
brilliant, brilliant.
It's
We're all
yeah,
hypocrites. We're all
we are,
hypocrites,
aren't we?
mate.
It's like
I
yeah,
love that. I love that so much. Once again, that is Simmo back to his very best. The voice of reason hits home again.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
no, thanks.
put science fiction on, and I'm like all into it.
Yeah,
You show me you show me a football comic with a bit of something that sounds a little bit unrealistic. I'm like, I'm not reading that rubbish. Do they
Well,
think I'm stupid?
we'll look out for the film of the footballer who wouldn't stay dead then, and
Yeah, exactly.
see maybe if
Yeah.
they do like a mashup with that and Billy Dane.
I'll be on it just as a ghostwriter.
Oh,
Yeah, but I mean, I thought, I mean, just to finish off, I thought the footballer wouldn't stay dead. I did read it back in the day. I don't think I read it every week.
yeah.
I liked the premise at the start, and then I remember reading it later on. But you're right. I like the fact that when you look it back, he was giving him guidance. He was acting like a mentor, like I said earlier, to Mel. You know, and so things about, you know, so if your schoolboy was reading that, you know, it's like, don't get angry, you know, don't be scared, but, you know, be resilient, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which yeah, I probably didn't really appreciate when I was 10 reading this. But
And I think maybe I would have been completely the opposite, because I didn't read them as a kid. I'm looking at it with an adult head.
Yeah.
So maybe if I'd have read them as a kid, they would have, like, I would have loved them, because your sense of imagination and everything is probably totally different when you're young.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah, it's like you're open to it.
Yeah.
Which is obviously the same thing even with the Roy of the Rovers story. If I'd have read that as a young child, Roy Race might have well been my hero. But because I didn't, and I look back at it now, I see how far-fetched some of that was.
Yeah.
You know, and I suppose in a way, I spoilt it for myself, because I didn't read it at an age when I could have really, really enjoyed it, which may be a sad thing. You know?
Well, that's just, you can't do anything about that, can you?
Exactly. That's, yeah. But I know, but I do think it's a valid point, and I think that's the difference as well. I mean, it's like, well, when I did the Striker, and you mentioned about the volumes, you know, and all those volumes, certainly in the 25 volumes up to this point, is obviously just all reprints of the story. But suddenly, you know, as a Striker fan, or somebody like me actually, who was aware of Striker being in the Sun newspaper, but didn't get the Sun newspaper, read it on the odd occasion here and there, but then saw when the comic first launched, and I picked it up, and then I was engrossed. And then when it came back into the Sun and wasn't a comic, I then did start, well, in actual fact, I was lucky. There was a guy at work that used to get the Sun every day. And when he'd finished with it, he used to give it to me, and I used to pull the Striker page out. I used to take that home, and I actually had a collection of them. But for me now, having those 25 volumes, you know, I can read the whole history of the story, and I mean, it's sort of immersed in it again. But I do think if I had never read Roy of the Rovers, like you said there, Simo, at any point, I think reading them now at my life and going back, I'm not sure that I would be as big a fan, obviously, as I am now, because, you know, they're also, I enjoyed the stories, but it's just they're part of my childhood, and there's a lot of nostalgia around them for me as well, right?
It's not just the story, it's what it reminds you of as the point you were in your life at the time as well, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It's the memories that go purely with the story. Like, I guess I'm very lucky, like, obviously talking about the Marvel situation, there'll be people who read the Marvel comics, and when the films come out, we'll be thinking, well, this isn't like it was in the comics. I'm really disappointed. This isn't how it was. But I didn't read that. I never read. I never read the Marvel comics. So to me, it's brilliant, because I haven't got the comics to compare to as a child. Probably thinks that the movies have, you know, shortchanged it, or have gone off track, or something like that, you know.
It's funny. I mean, I don't know how we're doing for time, but again, just on the tangent, exactly as you just said there, Simo. Was it a kid growing up? My dad always read books, and a lot more than me. You know, I've never really been a big reader of books. He has been the graphic novels, but my dad, whenever he sees a film, you know, of a book, it's always it's nowhere near as good as the book, and he's always saying, "Oh, that character shouldn't have been cast as that. That actor shouldn't have been cast as that character. That character was nothing like that. Didn't look anything like him or her or whatever." And it is amazing. I don't think I've ever seen my dad watch a movie of a book that he's seen and not have a complaint about it. So
Yeah.
sometimes
Well,
ignorance can be bliss, right?
I think that the fact with that is that because uh, a book can go in depth in a way that a film never can,
Oh,
because the film
yeah,
you can't actually know what the character's thinking, whereas in the book you can get the explanation.
yeah,
There haven't been many films that I've watched where I've also read the book, but on the ones that I have, I've always preferred the book. In both, is that the film will always be a little bit of a disappointment because it doesn't explain the things you can explain, or turned it into a film, it wouldn't even touch the surface of what the comics did, because you couldn't. It'd be impossible, wouldn't it? You just
yeah.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry there. Just unfortunately, Simone, we did get most of that, and hopefully it will come across to the listeners. But you did break up just a
Oh,
little
you
bit
lost me there, did
during.
you? Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
just
Yeah.
briefly, it just broke up. You
My,
went. In all fairness, for those listeners, if you couldn't follow, Simo was just trying to show that he's read a lot of Doctor Who books, and he was giving his impression of what the Daleks truly sound like.
Oh, right. Yeah.
good stuff. Good stuff. Well,
Oh
look,
dear.
shall we move on then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to the socials. That's the end of the show, really. I've mentioned about the future episodes that we've got a special coming up with Barry. So first of all, just to give you a bit more information on that. So it's obviously the 70th anniversary of Tiger being published first, and so also Roy of the Rovers. So we're going to do a flashback to 1954 with Barry. So we're going to record that one very soon, and flick through the first ever issue of Tiger with Barry as well. So we're looking forward to that. And then we're going to do another one with the inevitable Mr. David Skew as well as Barry. And we're going to then have a look at how anniversaries were covered in Tiger and Roy of the Rovers. So, we're going to look back at some of those old copies of Tiger and Roy of the Rovers with both of them and see what memories that kind of sparks amongst them. So yeah, so that's going to be coming up, and then like I said earlier, we'll probably have a bit of a break between episodes, just so we can get those out, because we're going to get those out at the beginning of September, when the anniversary actually happened of Tiger first being published, and then after that, we'll get back into the normal shows, the normal randomness.
I think it's a brilliant breaking point, because I think we're appealing to all of our listeners, hopefully, because we're going to do the Tiger special, and for those Striker fans out there as well, gives you a bit of a break if you haven't got volume 26. There you go. You see, you've got your chance to get your hands on volume 26 and avoid any of those spoilers, or you might even want to read along as I do part 2. What about that?
Read along with Tangent.
Audio commentary.
Yes, exactly. Not quite the director's cut, unfortunately.
No.
Right, so we do the social, so where you can get into contact with us. So I'll do the Facebook sites, and unless Tangent, do you want to do?
Well, I was going to say, look, for in honor of Goal, obviously how our podcast started, obviously. It's much more, as we say, it's much more a reference site with over 50,000 posts. But so the address is weareunited.proboards.com. And as we say, that's how our podcast started, with the great Goal and Rab. Obviously Simmo and Ridders joining on, and they were on the forum. So there's loads of things there. And if it's all right with you, Matt, I will cover the Facebook ones, because obviously I can then hand over X to you, because I still haven't. I can never learn that one. But then on Facebook, we've got the Roy of the Rovers comic 40 years on, and then in brackets Melchester Rovers, which is the fabulous group started by Ed Taylor, friend of the show. And that's got so many great posts, and when we get the feedback from people there. And then of course there's the Champ, We Are United, and Football Picture Story monthly fans, group as well on Facebook. So all good
Yeah, and I
stuff on
noticed on
both of
both
those
those
groups.
sites the activity has gone through the roof in recent weeks as well.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
been a lot,
there's more people
been a lot on
joining.
there, definitely.
Yeah, because I'm an admin on the Roy of The Rovers site. So yeah, keep approving loads of new members to that. So yeah, you're right, Simmo. Loads of excellent activity on there. Also, yeah, as I say, we'll start posting on the Mighty World of British Comics as well. So I'll stick this episode out on there as well, on Facebook, which is a great site as well. Which
Yeah,
I've
that is
recently
actually
joined.
yeah. I mean, obviously
Interesting.
that one is is brilliant, but obviously that's not just football comics. That is all comics. So that is it's a really good group.
And then we have our YouTube channel as well, Champ We Are United YouTube channel. I'll stick the link in the show description for people. So we've got quite a few subscribers to that. So if you want to see us, I don't know why you would, but you can. But as I said before, you can follow the stories which we show on the screen.
Yeah, we need to get some more subscribers on there. I've just clicked on it. We've only got 15 at the minute. So come on, guys. We need some more people on there.
Hit subscribe. Hit subscribe.
Get subscribing.
I will just, if it's all right, Matt, as well, actually, because we don't always mention this, and it's probably a little bit remiss, and I'm not sure that we always post on there, but me and Goal are obviously members, and of course, because of this episode, for those of you that don't know, and you might be interested, obviously, to learn more about Nick Jarvis and Pete Nash's fantastic creation Striker, on Facebook, there is the Striker World group. So that's just one word, Striker World.
Yeah, good shout. And also the X address is @champ_r. So it's @champ_r_ARE. So loads of places to kind of get into contact with us. Excellent stuff. Okay, well, it's time for the goodbyes then. So it's okay, Simmo.
Well, it was a bit of a surprise visit from me today. I wasn't planning on coming on, but I thought I'd try and make an effort. So it's good to be back.
We've lost you again for a little bit there, Simmo.
How long I've been back for? It was nice to be here. I've been well, yeah, I'm gonna have to sort out if I have to do something about it. Yeah, it's good to be back, and hopefully I'll be able.
Okay, Paul.
Brilliant. No, do you know something? I've got to say, Voice of Reason back. He's had some brilliant Voice of Reason moments, as Simmo said there. It wasn't intending to be. Shocked us both by being in the studio, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. And what I love about Simmo as well, he's taken us back to the roots of the pod and reminding us what Goal's reception used to be like and how Goal used to sound in those first couple of episodes as well. But it's brilliant to have you back, Simmo. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this episode, doing Striker and learning all about Andy Steele and Mel Deacon again.
Excellent stuff. Yep. So thank you very much, listeners, for having a listen to this podcast. As Simmo was saying, find us on YouTube, subscribe on there, or follow us on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be seeing you very soon with those special episodes. Until then, it's bye from us all. Good night.